Hello, and welcome to Fairview Baptist Church. I'm Pastor John Boyacek. I'm so glad you could join us in worship today. I trust that you will be blessed.
All right. Good morning, everyone. All right. Well, this morning we have the awesome opportunity to hear from Pastor Steve Bell. And I know for a lot of you, that name's going to ring a bell and you're going to know who he is and you just can't wait. For some of you, you're like, Steve Bell, oh, what's that? Okay. So I'm going to speak, I'm going to give you a little introduction. I'm going to put my notes up properly here. Just so we can get a sense of who Pastor Steve Bell is. You can make your way up if you want. I try not to be too long. So he was born in mainland China to missionary parents. And when missionaries were expelled from the country, they moved to Canada and eventually found themselves in Fenelon Falls when his father was called to be the pastor at Fenelon Falls Baptist Church. He attended Central Baptist, which is now known as Heritage College and Seminary. And he served in pastoral ministry for over 39 years, including 5 here at Fairview. And am I getting all the facts right? You can fact check me if we're good here. Him and his wife Blanche have been married for 59 years. And this summer marks 61 years since he first became an intern at a summer camp and preached his first sermon. So, Fairview, Pastor Steve Bell.
I think so.
We good?
To be honest, this is ridiculous. As you found out, I'm an old man. Too old to be up here. I'm not a well man. And I've been talking to the doctor lately. I've been going downhill. Everything happens faster these days. Do you know what? You get old fast. Before you know it's coming, it has come. I'm glad to be here. You people have been good to me. You've prayed for me. You've loved me. And it's great to call this church home. It's strange to be on the platform and not know the team. But I've had great times here. You made it hard for me by calling Mark to be your interim. I'm with you every Sunday watching on television at home. And he's good. He's not the easiest guy to follow. And I'm really encouraged. I'm not involved in helping you call a new pastor. That's none of my business. God's looking after that. You got a team here. But if God has given you Pastor Mark Lowry for an interim, He's going to give you someone good. Just trust Him. I want to preach this morning From a story in the Gospels that's in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And I'm going to read from Mark chapter 5, starting at verse 21. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him when he was by the lake. And then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him that my little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live. So Jesus went with him. And a large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and spent everything she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" You see the crowd, people crowding around you, his disciples answered, and yet you asked, "Who touched me?" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, go in faith. Your faith has healed you. Go in peace. Be free from your suffering." While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. Your daughter is dead, they said. Why bother the teacher anymore? Overhearing what they said, Jesus told them, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anybody follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And when they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. He went and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him, and went in where the child was. And he took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anybody else know about it, and told them to give her something to eat. Sometimes we read things and we don't know what we're reading. We're introduced to a man. We're told he's the ruler of the synagogue. That sounds like it belongs in the Bible, doesn't it? And we read it and keep on going, not understanding that we haven't a clue what a ruler of a synagogue is, or was back in this day. This book wasn't written in our day. We've got to go back and live in that day. to understand it. Ruler of the synagogue. What does it mean? Well, it means that he sits in the front row every Saturday morning. To raise their annual budget, people gave an offering to the church. The guys who gave the most got to sit in the front row. Literally, they bought their seats. Because that church, that group, believed that if you were godly, God would reward you financially. So the people who could give the most had to be the most godly. Thankfully, we don't believe that anymore. But he's proud. And Jesus comes to town. And this man surprises everybody. Proud, good-looking, wealthy, got it all put together. Has it made. And he falls down at Jesus' feet. And pleads for the life of his dying daughter. How did the town see that? Was that the kind of conduct that the local synagogue expected of their ruler? No. But he's so desperate for the life of his daughter that he's willing to cook his own goose. And fall down before the stranger of Galilee who is conducting a ministry that's not approved. He didn't go to Central Baptist Seminary. He hasn't been ordained. He's not one of us. He's not proven. But Jesus says, I'll go to your home. And there's a huge crowd, and they start to move in the direction of the Jairus' home. They can't move fast. And there's a woman there. You wouldn't notice her. She doesn't want to be noticed. It's against the law for her to be there. She has so many things against her. She's a woman. In a day and in a culture where chauvinism ran everything. Women didn't go to school. They didn't need an education. They weren't citizens of the country. They had no legal rights. They ran the house. Kept it clean. Made the meals. And had the kids. That was it. If Jairus sat in the front seat of the synagogue, because she is ill and has been ill for 12 years, she's not even allowed to come in. The law was given by God in Moses' day, centuries before. They were living in the wilderness. And disease wasn't understood, and it could come in and wipe out the whole budding nation. So they had to be careful. But the men of this lady's time had forgotten the reason for the law. And as chauvinists, they used it to keep a tight control. She's not even allowed to be in the crowd. And if she's discovered with her disease, the Bible says she's had an issue of blood for 12 years. Guys, this leaves us out. Women have periods. We don't understand that stuff. To have one 12 years long? Think about it. If she discovered, they probably wouldn't kill her because the Romans are in charge, but she'd probably have to leave town forever. She's desperate. She comes in and tries not to draw any attention to herself at all. And gradually works her way to the crowd until she comes up behind Jesus. She doesn't want to be seen. And she reaches up and grabs the hem of his outer garment. She touched the hem of his garment. That's what we've heard. The word is to ignite, to set on fire. She's not just touching it. She's grabbing it with intensity and purpose, desperate. That touch will bring her the healing that she's longed for. And immediately she's healed. She feels like she hasn't felt in 12 years. Absolutely incredible. And I think she's hoping to slip out unnoticed. But Jesus stops the whole crowd. He puts the ruler of the synagogue on hold for her. And he says, "Who touched me?" The disciples are saying, "Who touched you?" There's a whole crowd banging and bumping against it. No. Somebody touched me with intent and purpose. I can feel that the power has gone out of me. Can I take a minute? Some of you work in the medical profession. You may be a doctor, a nurse. You may be a technician, a therapist. You may be a PSW. I'm pretty clever. I've changed an RN into a PSW. And Blanche is a real good PSW. But do you ever come home drained? Does the administration under the hospital always understand your needs? Does the government of Ontario understand your needs? Do your family always understand your needs? This just passage tells you that Jesus Christ understands your needs. Don't forget it. And thank you, health workers, for what you give us. She realizes that she's not going to get out unrecognized. Jesus is going to insist, "Who touched me?" He's going to find this out. He's not going to let it go. And she falls at his feet and blurts out her story. When the crowd hears it, many of them would be incensed. Her heart is pounding. She's scared. How's she going to get home? But Jesus keeps her there because he's got one more thing to give her. And I loved it. For 12 years, she hasn't had relationships. She's unclean. She's in isolation. And Jesus turns to her and says one word, daughter. What was that like for her? He not only gave her the gift of health, he gave her the gift of relationship. She stands up, unafraid of the crowd because they can't touch the daughter of the visiting rabbi. She got far more from her encounter with Christ than she asked for. And it's interesting that these two people, one at the top end of the social scale and one at the very bottom, would fall down before Jesus Christ. If we went to Capernaum today and we could mark out these two spots, how far apart would they be? Feet, yards, a block or two? And I love this story. Because in it we see the beauty of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. How do I get to see it for myself? I do what they do. I fall down at his feet. God bless you.
I'm so glad you're able to join us today in worship. If you have a need, a prayer request, feel free to reach out to us at the church here. You can give us a call, or you can also email us. God bless you.